Karl, I got to say, this is the most unique and coolest business card I've ever seen. So I want to start off on a bit of a light note because we're going to have a heavy conversation here. But could you share the story or the story or just what is this burrowing owl? What's going on here?
This burrowing owl was sitting on a fence post. A friend of mine that's a photographer camped along the edge of the road and finally got a picture of this young man here with his head bent, and I thought it was a pretty unique picture. And I guess I'm going to ask the viewers there that have looked at this, what does that bird say to you on the first impression? Tom and I have kind of discussed back and forth what we think it is, but I guess I would like to know what your response is when you finally see this.
Should we give them like 2 seconds here?
Yeah, we might have to. They might have to think a minute or two.
All right, we're going to give you a few more seconds. All right, I hope you got your guess, Karl.
My guess is, now what the hell do you want? Is what my terminology would be. And I am Karl Connell.
I'm going to go with that one.
And I live north of Newport, right on the Niobrara River. We have a cattle ranch. We have about 200 head of cows. We have pasture. We're going to be blessed with this Keystone pipeline, because that's what we've been talking about, with about 2,900 feet of it. The land agents from TransCanada come to me one day, visit with me at the kitchen table, and asked me to fill out some information on my land. And I said, well, okay, that would be fine. But once I took time and found out what was going to happen, it amounted to TransCanada is a foreign company out of Canada, wants to construct down through our property a 36-inch diameter tar sands crude oil pipeline. Very toxic substance. It is full of benzene and a number of other chemicals. My greatest worry is that when they come through, they're going to have a 110-foot wide path that is going to be 3,000 feet long, and they're going to scrape back the topsoil, and they're going to stockpile it. The topsoil on one side of the right-of-way, and the other soil is going to be dug 10 feet deep for a trench, probably about a 50 by 10 foot deep trench to put their pipeline in. And when they get through putting that in, they're going to be going through some blow sand. That's what's in a hay meadow I have, and then the other meadow they go through is nothing more than a pasture that has blow sand, goes down through some wet hay meadows or whatever. It's basically pasture. It's probably going to be very difficult to reclaim, and by reclaim what I'm meaning is getting the grass back to before construction quality so cattle can graze on it, and we're not going to lose any loss of production. We're going to have plenty of pasture. Also, where they're going to put this pipeline is within about 1,000 feet of a stock well I have, the only source of water in a dry season for this pasture. What my greatest fear is, I'm going to have me a 3,000 foot long by 110 foot starting of a blowout, because if they can't get that reclaimed and we have the prevailing winds northwest to southeast, I'm going to have a giant blowout that my good neighbor TransCanada says they can control and reclaim and get it back to original quality, which is all a bunch of bullshit, because they can't do it. The young man that's in charge of that has never done it before, and he don't know how to do it in this world, in this sand. But also, when they're doing their construction by this well, I'm almost confident to say before they leave, they're probably going to contaminate my source of water for the pasture, which this is the purest drinking water I got, the best water I got on the place. It comes directly out of the ground. It's probably a shallow well, about 80 foot, that connects to the Ogallala Aquifer. In my world, we've got a shale underpan, but there's also cracks in the shale where the Ogallala Aquifer comes up in there and supplies water to it. And it's the purest water that I've got, the best water. You can drink it right out of the well in a glass. It does not have to be filtered, purified, or anything. I mean, it's pure drinking water. It's the best I've got. Also in the area by that where they're going by, my neighbor has taken on a pipe yard, which is to the west across the road, and it's going to be a 30-acre pipe yard. They're going to store this 36-inch pipe here when they're constructing their pipeline. That is at the top of a creek that runs down next to and through my property, a set of corrals. Now the runoff from that is going to end up in my creek. Also to the east is a starting of a creek that runs east down through a pasture, my neighbor's pasture, and eventually down into the Niobrara River here. If we have a spill, and the if is a bad word because all it amounts to is when and where, because I'm guaranteed it's going to be a spill someplace, and the reason why I'm talking that, when we first had an interview with Robert Jones, TransCanada CEO, his comment was that we are going to replace every joint of that pipe within a 25 to a 50-year period. He more or less told me that we will have a leak someplace. It's made out of inferior pipe. It's not very good when they got it contracted from an Indian company instead of having it built here in the United States. I mean, if we want jobs, we should have employed our own people. That's another thing. My main problem is if we have a leak up in my area, the leak or the oil, the crude oil or whatever portions of that is heavy. It's heavier than water. It does not float. It goes to the bottom of your lake or pond or river or creek or whatever. That oil has access to the river through my property if they have a spill. Once it gets into the river, all you have to do to see how they're going to clean up is go to the Kalamazoo River in Michigan. I hope you viewers are familiar with it. If you're not, click on there, find out what's going on. They've worked at it more than a year to clean up the Kalamazoo River. They are not there yet. They spent $700 million, the last figure I had, and they have not begun to start to clean it up. Their cleanup is, let's haul in some sand and gravel, dump it in the river, cover it up, and it's out of sight, out of mind. Then they also go through there, and on the shore or in the grass areas, they've got a thick, heavy mat. They've laid on that oil or whatever, and that's what's supposed to sop up this crude oil. That's not happening. This is a heavy tar-based sort of crude oil. It does not float. It does not flow. The problem also is in the MDI, the MSDS. That is the Material Safety Data Sheet, which hopefully all you people will see here in a moment. Has to do with all the chemicals that are in this tar sands crude oil here, and the main one that we're having problems with, and there's heavy metals in this, the main one we're having problem is benzene. Benzene is a product that has the same specific gravity as water, of which, if I remember that, we will see a picture of that if I can remember to bring it. It combines readily with water. You cannot tell any difference between that. We're talking about parts per billion that are toxic to the human person. Also in this MSDS sheet, it goes on through here, it tells the health problems with each one of these products. One of them, they've got N-hexene, they've got toluene, and they've got benzene. It's a carcinogen, and it's not good for animals or humans, and it produces leukemia in human beings. This is a bad product. This oil is not good for us.
This is the first I've seen information on the chemicals that are actually going to be used here, Karl. This is really disturbing.
And also, I was yesterday down to Lincoln, to the state's capital, testifying to the Natural Resources Committee in Lincoln, and I asked one of the senators if he had one of these sheets here on the crude oil that's going to be coming down through here, and his indication was he apparently didn't have it, because no, he didn't, and I personally asked him to read the chemicals that was in this tar sands oil, and he refused.
He refused?
He refused. And
Ignorance is bliss.
I guess so. And the reason his excuse was that he refused to read it, because I said, I want you to read those chemicals so you know what's in there. So when your arrogance was there during the meeting yesterday, that he says this oil is safe. There's nothing the matter with it. It's not going to hurt you. This pipeline is good. And if I felt that if he read the chemicals in there, maybe he would get an understanding of actually how bad this oil really is. And also in my statement I wrote there, and I'm sure there's some viewers out there, once they get a hold of this chemicals in here, I want somebody to tell me what combination and what amount of these chemicals in this tar sands crude does it take to produce the 158-degree heat in this tar sands crude to make it flow. It's got to be heated so that it'll flow, because it's too thick and too gooey, and I mean, it just won't flow if it's not about 158 degrees. I know there's some readers out there that can tell me that, and I'd be real interested to know what kind of combination they got to have. Some of these products will just boil exposed to air.
This is the first time I've seen a specific list of chemicals that are going to be used. I know they've TransCanada's called that proprietary, but you did some digging, and that's how you got this?
Yes. Basically, where this come from, when you read on the top label here, it says Enbridge. This come from Enbridge because there was a gentleman that was pissed off at Enbridge Company, and he said, well, this might be interesting to the viewers. So it come on to a Facebook website. This is basically the same product, the tar sands crude that Enbridge pumps in their pipelines up in Michigan. This is the same product. It all comes from Alberta, Canada, up there in the province of Alberta, Canada. So this is pertinent information. Also, they've got in here, the one I like is they've got a propane, which is highly explosive. Basically what we have here is a ticking time bomb. When we have a leak, it ruptures, it punctures, it splits open or whatever. All it takes is static electricity to ignite this product, and we've got a live bomb. And not to be promoting terrorism, I don't want that, but this is a bad bomb. And there's one thing that we had this year in the state of Nebraska, and it's right back up here at Newport, where Tom rode by. There's a convenience store there. Here this summer, they blew up.
I saw that. I camped right behind there. There's a big sand pit there now.
That's where there used to be a diesel fuel tank. Electricity come into the building and went out and ignited, went out through the electrical part and ignited that diesel fuel barrel. I think it's probably about 8 or 10,000 gallon storage tank for diesel fuel. Ignited and blew that up out of the ground. And everybody says stuff can't happen. This is the first one in the state of Nebraska that has happened to a convenience store. And they said there's no way it should happen, but it did. So
I saw the sand with my own eyes, yeah. What was left of that pit.
And this also, TransCanada constructed they just put it in line, a natural gas line up in, I think it was Gillette, Wyoming. I think that one blew up here this year. You're going to have to go back and do a little research or whatever. And that blew, I think it's a 70-foot split in the pipe, and blew it completely up out of the ground. And the only thing they could come up with, the reason that blew up, is because they had a small leak in that pipeline, of which TransCanada themselves constructed. It's a smaller diameter, and there was a valve. Either there was a valve there, or there was a small leak there, and they thought that a coyote walked along there with static electricity and ignited that, and blew that out. You'll have to do a little bit of research. I don't know whether that's going to show up or not any place, but that's what I've been told. Because there was a gentleman out there for the police department that investigated that, and that was what they was talking about. Also, another thing that has happened is this, if we can get a picture of it, is a site taken off a computer, and this is pre-construction of a pumping site east of Erickson, Nebraska, here south of O'Neill.
for a company that has not been given a presidential permit to come into America and build this pipeline.
You're correct. This is pre-construction work. Somebody here in the state of Nebraska has to step up to the plate, file a injunction of a cease and desist order until the presidential permit is signed. The senators and governor of the state of Nebraska step up to the plate and get a little sand and tell them, until you get your permits, until you get our approval or whatever, you quit your jacking around doing construction work. Also, we had yesterday when I was at the public hearing, it was evident to me that we had two senators at the public hearing that were, the polite way to say, they were bought and sold by TransCanada, just by their arrogance and the way they treated the landowners that come down there to testify in favor of LB1 bill.
How they treat you?
The one gentleman that I had a problem with was Senator Christensen of Imperial. He was laughing and joking and kind of more or less poking fun at people. He held up a sign that said that you can't win, to that effect. I don't know if that was the exact one on his notebook or whatever, while people were sitting there testifying before them, purely arrogant. It just, and that was unprofessional of him. Also, the chairman of the committee, Senator Langmeyer, was not quite as bad, but you knew that his demeanor was, I'm bought and sold, my check's in the mail, I've got my check, I'm going to get my check, or some other gratuities for his own personal gain. It was a very disgusting session down there. We was left yesterday morning from Stewart here at about 4 in the morning. We got down there at 9, started the committee meeting at 10, and we was there till 4:30 when all our people that went with us finally had a chance to testify.
Yet you're going again tonight. You're going to drive again there late night tonight.
I'm going to try to leave here about 6:30 tonight and go back down there for a session tomorrow. It has to do in front of the Judicial Committee. And I think they're going to be we're going to be taking testimony on the eminent domain bill. There's 6 bills have been introduced. The one yesterday had to do with citing authorities.
Karl, can I interrupt you? I got to ask you something.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel about the fact that you have to take this time out of your life? You're a very busy man.
Yes.
How do you feel about the fact that you have to take this time out of your life to try to talk some sense into politicians who aren't listening, and to have to deal with something that shouldn't even be on the table to begin with?
Well, to be perfectly blunt, I'm pissed off as hell. Taking my time to go down here to talk to some arrogant people, to see what's at stake here. Basically, this fight is being fought. For me, will there be a leak in this pipeline? I don't think so the rest of my lifetime. But I've got two sons and a daughter that hopefully somebody will decide they want to do what I'm doing. Also, I've got 2 grandsons and a granddaughter. This is mainly for my kids and my grandkids on down the line, that hopefully will be able to stay here and do what I'm doing. This fight is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm disgusted. I've been treated like shit by TransCanada because they've given me an easement here, and if I don't sign easement, they're going to file eminent domain, steal my property. A lot of people don't understand what property I'm talking about, because in the easement or whatever, I'm not selling fee title to my land. I'm just selling property, and what the property I'm talking about is my rights to do with that land what I want to. And this is a bullying tactic. I don't like it. And I think I was going to testify yesterday in Lincoln, or tomorrow in Lincoln, tomorrow in Lincoln, and one of the main reasons I'm going down there, because when I left Lincoln last night at 4:30, I was pretty well pissed off all the way from here to home. That was about 6 hours. I got home about 10:30, and thought about it all last night, and got up this morning and was thinking about it this morning, and if I'd had Mr. Christensen or Mr. Langmeyer by him, I'd probably strangle him. And they're that arrogant, and they're not paying attention to the taxpayers in the state of Nebraska, telling them what our concerns are and why we don't need it and why we don't want it.
Metaphorically speaking, right?
Metaphorically speaking.